Hello, everybody. And welcome back to another episode of Just Gay Stuff podcast. My name is Jess.
And I'm Lauren.
Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. Happy Mental Wednesday.
Yeah, it's been crazy. You and I have had a few crazy weeks.
We have had a few crazy weeks. I think we've just been, I can't even think of the word, like...
Busy.
Yeah. Occupied?
I feel like for the first time
Hammered?
in my life, I've had this insane work-life balance, which has been so good.
Ooh, calm down.
Yeah, I know, right? But at the same time, it's also just been busy, like still busy.
Yeah, I think our problem is we finally have allowed ourselves time to have a social life, but with that
Then we fill it up with all these things.
Tired.
Yeah.
Still haven't had enough sleep.
I know. So happy Wednesday, everyone. If you're listening on a Wednesday, on the day that this comes out, whether you're listening on your streaming or you're listening on Joy 94.9 FM, your favourite radio station.
Well, it's our favourite radio
down
station.
in Victoria. Yes, it is. Mostly because we have this show on there, let's be honest. And thanks, Joy, for having us. It's always been amazing. Yes. If you're listening on streaming, well,
you can listen whenever.
How is the year going? Yeah, it might not be Wednesday for you. It could be Thursday or Friday or Saturday.
Or it could be a
Sunday,
really boring Monday morning and we're just here to liven up that Monday morning.
So you don't get Monday-itis.
Oh, that's a good one. I was going to say Monday blues.
Yeah, well, like post-holiday blues.
Yeah.
I get those all the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, how's the year going? How's the year going for everybody? Have we ticked anything off the vision board yet?
Oh, we have.
Yeah.
We had a very nice family dinner on Australia Day.
Which was on your vision board.
It was on my vision board.
We don't get a lot of downtime to be able to spend time with family together.
Yeah, so that was really nice for all of us to all be in the same room and just have a pleasant, nice evening together.
Yeah, and then I didn't put this on my vision board.
But it's definitely one on your vision board.
It's
because you just wanted to add another thing to the list of like busyness.
I just wanted to add more hours to my week. So I started playing soccer, everyone, because yes, I was inspired by watching the Matildas.
I was going to say, she thinks she's such a Tilly now.
Like every other lesbian was. So I'm just joining that club and it's fun. I'm feeling really good. It's, you know, how they say mental health wise, if you go out and you do some exercise. Yes. Endorphins, which I
How did you feel after your first training though?
Oh, I was fucked. I was absolutely fucked. But it was so much fun and all the girls are so nice and it's a good time.
They are so nice. I found it really lovely because I was there.
Lauren came as my support person.
I was going to say, not for playing soccer. When Jess first told me about this idea, she was like, hey babe, there's this over 30 soccer team, blah, blah, blah. Do you want to join? And I was like, no. Like the quickest no she's ever got in her fucking life. Yeah. I was like, absolutely not. Yeah. But I will be your moral support.
It was good. It was good. You didn't have to come with me, but I really appreciate it.
No, I think it was good. Like, you never know what people are like in that first initial sense. But all the girls are really lovely. Even yesterday not yesterday because this is Wednesday, but even
the last training
session you went to, you forgot your drink bottles. So,
and you know, everyone, I just want to say how awesome Lauren is as a partner. I forgot to take a drink bottle to my sporting event.
That's because you made your best friend join the team.
I did. Yay, go Carly. And then Lauren drove separately to the sports ground to give me my water bottle.
I did.
You are the best.
Thank you, my love.
But you know that.
I do.
You do. That's
I do. You tell me this all the time. So I am greatly appreciative and you are also the best. But I can't take the credit for driving because your mother did.
That's cool. She's awesome too. Speaking of sport.
Ooh.
Today is another educational episode.
I love educational episodes. We're here for the queer learning.
Do you know, I was just thinking.
I'm just going to coin that.
You're going to queer learning?
Yeah.
If we ever had to take a test to become like officially queer, like a citizenship.
Oh, I would fail the fuck out of it.
No, but we've been doing these educational episodes.
Since doing it, I might be a bit better. But
we're just going to help everybody get their queer citizenship. This is what this is about.
Oh, I love it. But originally I would have failed if we hadn't have done these educational episodes.
Same. I feel like
I knew fuck all.
There's some of those like underlying things you think as the queer community we should know, but we just don't.
No, we don't. Because there's not enough education when it comes to queer people. But
so
we are here for that.
That's where we're coming in. This week's educational episode is going to be about a little event called the Gay Games.
Ooh, what is the Gay Games?
Look, I'm just kidding when I say little event.
Oh.
Because it's actually a massive event.
Ooh.
And we're going to tell you in this episode why everyone needs to know about the Gay Games.
That's true. I've never heard of the Gay Games before at all.
Yeah. So tell me what you know about them.
the name that you just read to me.
Literally. Well, that was the same as me before I started researching this. And I'll get into why I wanted to do this episode at the end, because I kind of want to tell the whole story and wrap it up and then go
nice
back.
Little bow tie present.
But luckily, if
Educational
you know,
present.
Yeah, if you know nothing about the gay games, I'm
I
going to
don't.
give you, Lauren, and everyone who's listening, an absolute mini crash course on everything that you do need to know about them.
All right, let's go.
We're going to get into it. Why the games exist, when they happen, how they came to be, where they started, and possibly the most important part of the story is who started them.
I love that. Everything comes from something, right? This podcast came from you and I.
From little things, big things grow.
Yeah, okay. That's not where I thought we were going with this.
Don't sue me, Paul Kelly.
Yeah, I don't know what I was going to say then. You threw me off guard.
Sorry. Well, let's start this little journey. The journey starts with a very important man who was an Olympian himself.
Really?
And his name was Tom Waddell. And we can't possibly learn anything about the gay games without first learning about how special Tom was as a person. He was a brave, fearless man that together with some close companions created what we now know to be the gay games.
That's cool.
And, well, you're just learning about the gay games.
Yeah.
Maybe some of our listeners are just learning about the gay games too. And how funny, like, we're all in the queer community, but we don't know there's a gay games.
Yeah, that's wild to me.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
I know.
Just think of all the people from the gay games that we could have been talking to by now.
I know. Just so everyone knows, this story is a little bit of an emotional roller coaster. I'm just going to put that out there.
Whew, where's the tissues there? Oh,
Yeah, well, there is a box right
That's
there.
all right next to me. It's all right. Okay, you may proceed.
I also want to give a tiny little trigger warning because I will be saying that dreaded FAGGOT word, but it's only because of the context and it was a direct quote from Tom. So let's start with who is Tom?
Who is Tom?
Tom Waddell was born on November 1st, 1937 and grew up in Wyckoff, New Jersey in the USA. Tom said from an early age that he knew he was different from the other kids. He knew he was a bit more sensitive than the other boys, and he seemed to care more deeply for specific things than them too. But this person, though knowingly different, was a person that he loved very much and didn't forcibly want to change. Tom, going through his formative years in the 50s and experiencing sexuality being that absolute taboo subject, felt that when it came to coming to terms with his sexuality, that he felt like he was the only homosexual in the whole world.
Well, you would feel like that because there was nothing. Like you said, it was very taboo, very illegal, against the thing. That wasn't what men did.
And you think about how isolating it is for some people now. Think about all that time
about
ago
it back then,
in the 50s. It's just, it wasn't talked about. You knew because, I mean, Oscar Wilde, who we spoke about last week, that was the 1800s, right? So we've always been here, but the fact it wasn't aired.
It wasn't aired. It wasn't spoken about as much, or people were unfortunately put in this minority where you're scared and out of fear, you retreat into the closet or into the shell and you don't.
And talking about it being aired, it was only ever aired as someone's dirty laundry.
Yeah, exactly.
It was never positive.
No, never positive, and you didn't have representation.
So Tom knew all of these things were a lot harder. So when it came to coming to terms with his sexuality, he thought he was the only one. He didn't know people like him. There was no representation for people like him.
Said that.
And of course, it wasn't widely spoken about. Tom said when he was growing up, quote, "I liked who I was as a person, but my biggest fears were that I didn't want to be this social, physical, and bizarre outcast. I just wanted to be like everyone else and to have a lot of friends like everyone else."
Don't we all?
Yeah. And the way Tom sought to do that was to connect with other kids, not intellectually, but athletically. So Tom used the skills that he had and he became very heavily involved in school athletics.
That makes a lot of sense, especially back in that era. You know, you're trying to
connect with people on a level.
Connect with people on a level. And with the athleticism, you can portray yourself in a way
that maybe people don't know.
Yeah, people wouldn't necessarily pick up on the homosexuality vibes. And it would be terribly hard, even though you know that you're a little bit different to the rest or you're a bit more sensitive to the rest of the people, because from such an early time, like we said, from the 1800s, we literally were discriminated against.
Well, it was illegal.
That's what I mean. Like, it was illegal and just crazy.
So Tom chose athletics. It was somewhere that he felt he could comfortably sit. Being an athlete came very easily to Tom. His father was a gymnast before becoming a police officer, and his mother had taught him ballet.
Wow.
I think that's quite cool.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
For a mother to like openly teach their son ballet, I feel like obviously at that time there wasn't a certain stigma.
That's a really interesting thing to me, to be able to, I guess, be like, okay, we'll just teach him, teach him ballet.
Maybe she just knew her son and didn't have a problem.
Which is wonderful. I wish that all parents were like that. We know that some people unfortunately don't have that.
Yeah.
But we're here. Free mum hugs is always around.
Yeah, love free mum hugs.
Yeah.
Tom said that if he had have had things his way growing up, then more likely he would have wanted to become a professional dancer, because dancing was the absolute passion of his. The problem with this though, Tom could never be a dancer because, as he quotes, and this is where the word is happening, everyone, who were the real dancers in the 50s? They were all branded faggots. And despite Tom knowing the truth about his sexuality, he couldn't bring himself to identify or be branded by that. He was quoted saying, "It's not something I felt I could identify with at the time. I was far too frightened."
And that's what I said at the beginning, that it comes from a place of fear of where we retreat back into the closet, back into our shells, whatever you want to call it.
We try and,
it's
just
that push-pull effect of like, oh, I'll dip my toe a little bit out to see how it's received. And it's shitty that throughout history we've lived in many times, not us necessarily, but our community have lived through times where you couldn't feel comfortable being yourself.
But even the things like you couldn't feel comfortable just doing what you wanted to do. You always had to like curve your sharp corners for the sake of someone else or for the sake of society, So Tom kept with gymnastics as it was the closest thing that he could get to dance.
That makes sense.
He attended college on a track scholarship, and after furthering his education at medical school in 1965, he was drafted into the US Army as a preventative medicine officer.
Wow.
Can I just say there's another really like homophobic place to land as a gay man?
Yeah.
However, when he realized he was going to be sent to Vietnam in 1966, he voiced his opposition to war, and instead of being court-martialed like other people had, the Army sent Tom to study tropical disease and further train as an athlete.
Wow.
I think they probably did this because he had such talent in the areas that he applied himself to.
Yeah.
He was a very talented individual.
Someone who saw an opportunity and went out to get it. Do you think that also comes from a place of not necessarily just trying to fit in, but that essentially, and trying to prove yourself like, I can do this?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. Well, at 31, Tom finally qualified for the United States as the oldest member of their Olympic team and competed in the 1968 Summer Olympics in Mexico City.
Wow.
Tom said it was an absolute dream come true to be a part of the Olympic Games. He could not believe he was there. He didn't compete in gymnastics, however. He competed in one of the most challenging tests of any Olympics, which was the decathlon.
Ugh, I'm tired thinking about that.
Now, for anyone who doesn't know what the decathlon is, if you don't know sports, it involves competitors to take part in 10 separate track and field events over the course of 2 days. So these include, just to let you know how fit you would have to be to do this.
I'm not. I struggled walking up the stairs at work today.
Well, then Lauren will never do a decathlon.
No, I won't.
Neither will I. Day 1, the 100-metre sprint, long jump, shot put, high jump, and a 400-metre race, only to be followed up on day 2 by 110-metre hurdles, discus, pole vault, javelin, and finishing with a 1,500-metre run. That's a lot.
That is a lot. I would be dead.
I really
You're working on your fitness because
up
of soccer.
in the gym, just working on my fitness.
What is this random song?
Who's my witness?
Every night you're like, who just randomly breaks out into song?
I know.
Case in point.
Me. Well, I take my hat off to any athlete who can do this because I know that I certainly couldn't. Tom, who certainly could because he did compete.
Also, just side quest, they did this in Mexico City. Imagine how freaking hot
True.
it would have been.
True. Well, Tom competed, but unfortunately in this Olympic Games, he placed 6th. And his fellow USA teammate, Bill Tomey, took first place and was named the greatest athlete in the world.
Oof.
But winning was not what Tom cared about. Bill and Tom both went on to keep competing together and conducting clinics for athletes in many different countries.
What is clinics?
So clinics is like if you have a skill set and you take it to a different country, you might teach disadvantaged kids.
Right. Gotcha.
So like they went to a lot of African countries.
Okay, right.
Where kids are still quite starved of education. So they would take athletics there and,
teach them, the proper.
Yeah.
Yeah, got you. Okay.
In an interview that I watched, which I will put all of these parts into the show notes, so if you want to watch them, I highly recommend because it was really, really good. In the interview, Bill mentions that in some of the places that him and Tom ended up, they would be absolutely so tired after a day of spending all their time in track and field with all the kids.
Yeah.
And as Bill was getting ready to settle in for the night, Tom would just go down to the local hospital and help out by working on patients in need.
Oh my God.
So it was like selfless acts like this that really painted such a humanitarian picture of Tom and the fact that he just cared about people.
And then society is just an asshole.
Yeah, literally. Like we have all these beautiful souls that feel like they don't belong,
Imagine if we lived in a world... I say imagine because I know what the world is like right now. Fucking shit. But imagine if we lived in a world where there wasn't any minorities and everybody
there wasn't any prejudice
and everybody just lived harmoniously. Like you could just say, yeah, I live with my wife. What of it? Like who cares?
I feel like unfortunately it's one of those things where that would not make the world go round.
No, it wouldn't.
It should.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think unfortunately there's always someone that is ready to start a dictatorship.
Oh yeah. Don't we know it?
Yeah.
So after a knee injury quashed his dreams of competing in the next Olympics in 1972, Tom followed his heart and moved to San Francisco in 1974. San Francisco being a widely accepting city of the queer community, Tom felt that stepping out of being a professional athlete, he could start to live his life a little more authentically, as this was impossible to do while representing your country. So San Francisco was the perfect place.
I find that really interesting. Why was San Francisco such an open place compared to the rest?
Why is Sydney our pride city in comparison to Brisbane?
Can't answer that.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
I think it's just like a group of people congregate and then it just, how the circle just starts to widen.
Yeah.
I think it's just as simple as that. It's the same as like how in different states or different major cities we have such different majority of cultures. Yeah.
That's true. That makes sense. Yeah.
Well, a little bit of good news for Tom. He finally found love in 1975 when he met Charles Deaton, a man who was 12 years older than him.
Wow.
But their romance sparked, and after celebrating a year together on October 11th, 1976, they were actually featured on the cover of People magazine, making them the first gay couple to be featured on the cover of a major international publication.
Really?
Isn't that cool?
Really cool. I love that. I want to see that photo.
Actually, yeah, I should look it up.
Yeah.
And then I should link it.
Yeah.
In the early 80s, Tom met Sarah Lewinstein.
That's not a Jewish name if ever I've heard one.
Well, Sarah is a very important other half to this story.
Ooh.
She's a gold medalist herself, competitive softballer.
Wait, before you read the last part, I only read competitive softballer and then I was like, is she?
Competitive lesbian.
Yeah. She wasn't a competitive lesbian. She was just a lesbian.
Sarah said that Tom and herself struck up a friendship instantly, like two kindred spirits had found each other. The pair bonded over the fact that as sports people and Olympians, they had to remain closeted over their competitive years. Sarah stated that allowing yourself out of the closet while being an Olympian or a high-end athlete only opened you up to all kinds of harassment, not just by the media, but even in the locker rooms, and that then becomes fear for your own safety.
Yep.
And we still see it today. There's always a fascination that we have with celebrities or sports people.
That's so true.
And who they're dating, and it becomes more lucrative if they happen to be queer.
It's really true. I think, especially talking about Matildas in the World Cup and all of that, we watched an interview with Lani, I think it was.
No, you're reading Macca's book.
Oh, yeah, I was reading Macca's book. I thought it was Lani's interview. Maybe it was both of them because, both queer. But yeah, reading Macca's book, and
she was talking about in every interview someone asks her about her relationship status.
Someone asked her about her relationship or about how it's going or what, whereas none of the men get asked that stuff.
And it's like,
even if they were queer, they don't get asked that.
Is it a woman issue? Is it a queer issue? It's like, why the fascination? And I mean, I understand to an extent when you love a player or you love a person, you want to know all these things about them. But certain things when you're talking to them about their craft.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the thing is they want to be known and celebrated for their craft, not known by who they're dating. You don't want to be going to an interview being like, oh, yeah, that game was great. You won this, blah, blah, blah. But who are you seeing now? What?
Well, it's kind of like, and this is a little bit off topic, I suppose, but Mary Fowler is dating Nathan Cleary.
Yeah.
And all we see at the Matildas games, if he's there, is pictures of him on the big screen. Isn't it the same argument at the moment with Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce?
Yeah.
So everyone's getting the shits because they're at the game together, and instead of putting the game on the big screen, all the cameras are on Taylor Swift. Like, who gives a shit?
Nobody. Even Taylor Swift didn't give a shit.
I know. Well, back to Sarah and Tom.
Yeah.
Sorry for taking a little side quest. Yeah. Sarah said Tom was floating the idea to found a gay Olympic Games. Ooh. And he knew straight away that Sarah was the person to help him achieve the vision.
I love this idea already.
The gay Olympic Games were going to be a place where every athlete that competed could compete as themselves as a whole, openly and not having to hide any parts.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Wouldn't it? The Gay Olympics would also be a place for allies. It was a place for everybody, and that was the point.
That part right there.
Yeah.
That part, 100%. I think that's the biggest problem. I know we've spoken about this before, and I'm sure this will come up in this conversation about people always going, how come the gays need their own Pride March?
It's
and
like,
how
you
come
can
the gays need their own sporting events? And how come they this? Well, because we live in a place of fear for so long that we're just trying to find a place for acceptance.
Literally.
And love. And like, we're just out to have a big old fucking party that you're all invited to.
And Tom and Sarah were working tirelessly to get that big ass fucking party off the ground. They didn't have a lot of money between them. They fundraised as much as they could. They did car washes. They did car boot sales. And they wanted to do this just so that they could put the games together, because there was a lot to think about. There's hosting sports and renting arenas, and the fields have to be all nice and that kind of stuff. So you're paying for maintenance. They had to purchase the medals.
Yeah, wow. I didn't even think about that part.
All of the advertising. And this was like... essentially,
when was this? 1970s, 80s?
Yeah, it was early 80s.
Yeah.
So this is also before computers were like a massive commercial thing.
So like their advertising was really like flyers and word of mouth.
Yep.
And
so if you wanted to print something, you couldn't just do it at home on your printer.
No.
They literally had to go to a company and get those companies to print their stuff, which obviously would not have been cheap.
No.
So it wasn't a case of like nowadays we can do things ourselves, you know.
Yeah.
They wanted it to be as professional as possible so it could stand up to the actual Olympic Games and become its equal.
I hate that we have to put the word actual Olympic Games.
So did Tom and Sarah achieve this?
Yes.
Yes, they did. But it didn't come without its hurdles.
Of course not.
6 weeks before the very first Gay Olympics were meant to kick off in 1982 in the beautiful city of San Francisco, a lawsuit came.
Dun, dun, dun.
Who do you think the lawsuit came from? Just off the top of your head.
The Olympics.
Yep. How did you know?
I work in advertising, so that was my first guess.
The USOC, or the United States Olympic Committee, was suing Tom and Sarah for the use of the word Olympic being associated with anything outside of the actual Olympic Committee.
Nah, bullshit.
However, Tom and Sarah both knew that this wasn't the actual deal. They knew that this was a form of homophobia.
Yep, called it bullshit.
At the time, in the early 80s, the word Olympics was being used across multiple other platforms that were not associated with the Olympic Committee.
Right.
Can I say?
Yeah, okay.
In the USA alone, Tom and Sarah had found the Fireman Olympics, the Police Olympics, the Crab Cooking Olympics.
What?
The Rat Olympics.
No.
And even in Las Vegas, they had the Poker Olympics, just to name a few. And none of these competitions were being hit with lawsuits asking to be rebranded. So they knew at this point that it was nothing about the word Olympics and it was more about the word gay.
Shitty, but do you think because it was the 80s, is this like when the AIDS epidemic had started, or is this before?
This is just before.
Oh, okay, because I was going to say if it was like at the time of when the AIDS epidemic had started and unfortunately our community was struck with all that harassment and hysteria and stereotyping stuff at the time, I could understand where that lawsuit
I'm going to go ahead and say this was before that.
Okay.
Only because I'll get into that a little bit.
Right, okay. I'm jumping the gun
You
here.
are a little bit, but that's because you're smart.
SMORT.
So 6 weeks out from the opening ceremony, the race was on to rebrand everything that they had put together, replacing the Gay Olympic Games with just the Gay Games. And, you know, I'm sure to some extent they would have called it something else if they had the time.
Yeah.
But in some aspects, they had to just put masking tape over the word Olympics, so that just took out the word Olympics.
Well, they couldn't afford it.
Exactly. That had to be enough. With all the fundraising that they had done, they had just scraped over the line to fund the whole idea. Yeah. They couldn't then afford, with such little money and little time, to reprint everything.
Literally.
So, yeah, it became from the Gay Olympic Games to just the Gay Games. But happy times. In August of 1982, Tom and Sarah lifted the veil of the very first Gay Games in San Francisco.
That's really cool. I would love to have been a fly on the wall there. Or this is going to be a side quest moment, but this is what I love about these episodes is like, because I love history and I love English language and I love now learning about our community so much more, to just wonder what it would have been like to be there and be in that atmosphere.
I often wonder what it would be like in other times where we are not less privileged in a way, because that's not what I mean, but in a way of just like, we don't have the technology we have today.
Yeah.
Or things were harder and you had to think outside of the box, essentially. Things are essentially just given to us today. Everything is so obtainable.
Accessible.
Via social media and things like that.
Yeah.
So the opening ceremony in San Francisco, this is going to blow your mind, by the way.
Yeah.
Hosted 1,360 athletes from over 100 countries for 16 sports, and guess who performed?
Who?
Tina Turner.
What?
Yep.
That's amazing.
Tina had always been a fearless ally to the LGBTQIA plus community and took on the role of opening ceremony entertainment in a time where a lot of other artists wouldn't. But Tina had no fear. If you know anything about Tina Turner and her background, you know that she had to overcome a lot of hurdles in her own life.
Yeah.
And had learnt to be brave and unapologetically march to the beat of her own drum. And so she aligned herself with the LGBTQIA quite well, because she knew what it was like to do it tough and not be accepted. And if you know anything about Tina, like, she came up against like ageism. Everyone was telling her she's too old to do this, she's too old to do that. You know, people are telling us, oh, you're too gay to be in the Olympics, you know.
Yeah, such bullshit.
She knew.
I love that. She was like, I don't give a shit, I'm here.
Also, side note, did you know that Proud Mary is one of the most lip-synced songs by a drag queen of all time?
I did not, but that is awesome.
Now you do.
Now I do. Mind blown.
So Tina was definitely a draw card for the open ceremony. Sarah Lewinstein said that herself and Tom had no idea in the beginning how the games would be received, but the overwhelming support and the sold-out arenas still are such a fond memory for her.
Wow.
It allowed them to feel successful and that others also believed that the Gay Games were needed.
I think that's so beautiful.
Sold out. Sold out, bitches.
Sold out. And I think that's such a beautiful thing, going from they tirelessly fundraised and printed and had to go through this ordeal with the Olympics committee and change things, and yet it was still sold out.
Be that like wash of relief.
Yeah, the relief that we didn't do all this for nothing. It was still here.
The games provided the safest space for gay sports people.
Hell yeah.
Competitors mentioned feeling elated by not needing to hide parts of who they were, or to not have to choose between being an athlete or being themselves.
So important.
And spectators commented on the overwhelming feeling of unity.
It's just a warmth feeling.
When you hear the word unity, what do you think of?
Warmth.
I think of Woodstock in the 60s. You know how like
they're all vibing?
Yeah, like you know how everyone was there for the same reason?
Yeah.
That's like the vision I get, but I think now it'll be replaced with the visions I've seen of what the Gay Games were.
To me, unity just, warmth. But I understand your vision of like the Woodstock just being there together vibing for the same thing.
Yeah, it's like all the people in the same space. You know what I mean? So Sarah commented that she felt the Gay Games really took away the typical stereotypes that surrounded homosexuals and just made everyone an athlete, which was their sole purpose for being there.
Again, super important.
Yeah. After the success of the games, Sarah said that she had felt such a connection with Tom that she asked him to father a child with her.
What?
Yeah.
A lesbian and a gay guy having a child.
Oh my God. Shock horror. Tom said he always wanted to be a father, but he didn't really know what that would look like for him as a homosexual man. It wasn't a typical proposal for the time, an out lesbian and an out gay man becoming parents together. Sarah said at the time even the idea was frowned upon that any homosexual person would procreate or raise a family. It was always met with malice and harsh judgment. But Tom didn't have to think for too long. Sarah recalled him having tears in his eyes and saying yes straight away.
Oh, that's cute.
So when all was done for the first gay games, it was a giant success. Tom and Sarah went away together and conceived their daughter Jessica, who was born in 1983.
Wow.
At the time, Tom was also seeing public relations specialist Zon Artman, who he'd met while organising the games in 1981.
Tom and Zon.
Yeah, so it's obvious to me that they had a very open communication.
Yeah,
because
clearly. You'd have to.
Like, I'm not delving into someone's real personal life here, but I think Tom and Sarah obviously conceived Jessica naturally.
I was going to ask that next. I was like, was this a natural conception?
Well, I feel it was. And obviously Zon was in the know.
Yeah.
And also Tom and Sarah ended up getting married.
Really?
Yeah. So that Jessica's...
For the sake of the child?
Yeah, so that Jessica had parents that were legally bound to each other.
Wow.
And I don't know if that was a case of that was less frowned upon at the time or...
I think you'd have to have such great communication, like you said. Maybe they were soulmates in another life, but just were queer in this one, or who knows, I don't know. They could have been queer in the last one, but their souls refound each other again.
That's exactly what Sarah said.
Really?
They were just kindred spirits.
Yeah, wow.
So about the marriage, Tom said that it was something that they thought they had to do to protect their daughter, even though him and Sarah did live their own lives.
I have seen that before, and I'm not sure if it's still a thing today, but I do know that previously, looking into children as same-sex couples, there was a thing that said you had to be married so you could have parental rights. So say like if I carry our child and then something happened to us but we weren't married, I would be the biological mother and take the child away, even though you are still their parent.
Yeah.
But legally, according to the government...
Yeah, it makes me think maybe it was something along the lines of they conceived this child and obviously he was the dad, so he's on the birth certificate. But because they were married, if anything was to happen to either one of them, there was just another form of that child is mine.
Child, yeah.
Okay, so here's where it starts to get a little bit sad.
Oh, let me get the tissues.
Soon after Jessica was born, Tom was brushing his teeth one evening and recalled noticing white patches on his tongue, which resulted in Tom being diagnosed with ARC, which stands for AIDS-related complex.
The minute you said white patches on tongue, I knew what you were going to say.
Tom said at the time he prayed that this condition wouldn't further develop into full-blown AIDS, as his greatest fear was not being alive long enough for Jessica to remember who he was. But like many others in the 80s, Tom was unlucky and unfortunately did go on to develop AIDS. 2 weeks before the second gay games in 1986, Tom was diagnosed with a painful lung infection. Now, I might not say this right. Myositis.
Myositis.
Yeah.
Myositis. Yeah, I don't know.
That targets AIDS sufferers. Still, he showed up for the opening ceremony of the games.
Wow.
He even competed in the javelin that year and won gold before being rushed to hospital with tuberculosis. But he overcame the tuberculosis. Zon Artman, Tom's partner at the time, ended up moving in with Tom to be a prominent support for him throughout his AIDS journey. However, after just 10 days living together, Zon was also sadly diagnosed.
That is sad. That is really sad.
Tom was someone who could make light of almost every situation. He could laugh at his AIDS diagnosis and make jokes surrounding his mortality. But one thing that really worried him was the thought that maybe he had infected Sarah and therefore Jessica. He was overwhelmed that after Sarah was tested, she was negative, which in turn meant that Jessica was negative too.
Well, that more or less confirms that Jessica was conceived naturally.
But no, like even if it was IVF and they used his sperm, that's still, true. Tom's father and stepmother remained a big part of Tom's life, and he was always thankful that they stayed supportive through the trials and tribulations, regardless of his condition. They were so supportive of him.
That's so good.
Yeah. In 1987... Tom said in regards to his AIDS diagnosis, "I'm a host to something that was a complete accident, and if I knew I was at risk of being exposed, I would have taken steps to prevent it." And that quote right there would ring so true for so many in the community that we've lost.
It's true. But like we've said before when we've spoken about AIDS, the same thing happened with COVID. None of us knew what COVID was.
When you have no education on something and there's no explanation or research,
where it comes from or what. So of course you don't know what to do to prevent it. You've never been faced with this sudden disease before.
Exactly. On July 11th, 1987, at the age of just 49, Tom Waddell passed away from AIDS. And while that is such a tragedy, like so many others, he has left behind a great legacy for so many.
Truly.
Whew, I'm getting teary.
I know, me too.
The Gay Games, which have since been approved by the Olympic Committee.
Only took them a few fucking years.
I know. Continue to celebrate every 4 years and are dedicated to Tom's memory. They have successfully been running now for 43 years in total.
Wow, that's really cool.
So the last Gay Games were held in 2023 in Guadalajara.
I was going to say that 10 times fast.
Yeah, no.
Go on, try.
Guadalajara. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. But they were held in Mexico.
Yep.
This was a postponement due to COVID, actually. They were supposed to be in Hong Kong in 2022. And the next Gay Games are set to be held in Valencia in Spain in 2026. So only next year.
Oh, exciting.
And Lauren and I are going to try and go.
We are going to try and go, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Maybe our Espanol will come into use.
Yeah, we've been learning Spanish for a year now, so hopefully.
Don't know how much we've learnt, but...
Fun fact, Melbourne did bid to host the Gay Games in 2030. However, they withdrew the bid after a lack of funding from the state government. Don't know if this was a homophobic thing. I'm not going to say it was, because they also withdrew their bid to host the Commonwealth Games in 2026, and then they were copped with that giant fine. I don't know if anyone...
Why were they copped with a fine for though?
So they had essentially accepted to host.
Oh, they copped with a fine because they accepted to host and then they reneged on the hosting.
We can't. The funny thing is, the fine cost more than it would have cost them to host. So tell me how that makes any sense.
It does not.
But one cool thing is that here in Australia, we have actually already hosted a Gay Games.
Really?
It was the 6th Gay Games in Sydney in 2002. And hopefully in the future, we do get to host another.
I hope so. That would be awesome.
And I hope it's in Brisbane because I want to be the home city.
I thought you were going to say because I want to be the host then.
I'll host it too. I would not say no if they asked. The reason I chose to do this episode, which I said at the beginning I would get into after, is because I saw a Facebook post talking about Melbourne's bid for the Gay Games and how it wasn't going to go ahead. And the comment section of that, like the comment section of every other LGBT thing that I see, there were some hideous comments. But the one that stood out to me was that question that you said before. Why do we need a Gay Games? Why do the gays need this? It's the age-old question. Why do marginalised sections of community or cultures need celebration? Well, let me tell you specifically, we need the Gay Games still because it's easy to say back then that we weren't accepted and all those other true statements. But here's the facts.
I was going to say, I think we're still not accepted.
Yeah, in a percentage, yes. The Gay Games, even with today's progression, are still relevant in combating homophobia in sport. In 2018, which is not that long ago, a global study still showed that 82% of athletes still experience homophobia in their chosen sport.
We experienced it last year with watching the Olympics and...
Yeah, all that stuff that came from the Olympics.
Out from the Olympics.
The Gay Games have set to change the sporting world in a way that we can only hope mainstream sport will start to emulate.
Yeah.
Like in other sections of society, why can't it just be, okay, you want to compete? Yeah, okay, let's just see who's the best.
I hate, and we say it all the time, that hate is taught. And I hate the fact that it's like that because when we're all little kids, nobody cares whether you're black, white, straight, gay, freaking rainbow, I don't care. You just go, oh, that's a cool shirt. And suddenly you're friends and there's acceptance. Like, well, how do we suddenly change? Like, what fills our minds to suddenly change that?
I think the saddest thing is people are still teaching kids hate.
I know.
That's where that comes from and it sucks. So before we end the episode, there's a few facts about the Gay Games that I want to share with everyone really quickly.
Cool.
The Gay Games have always and continue to serve as an outreach tool for those who may be isolated in the community.
Super important.
They have provided scholarships to a range of athletes living with HIV and AIDS, as well as disability, who wouldn't normally be able to afford or attend an Olympics.
That's really cool.
They have acknowledged the gender inequality and made efforts to promote the participation of female athletes and equality in roles even within the organisation. So you don't even necessarily have to be an athlete.
Yeah.
They make sure that there are even people with equal opportunity working for the Gay Games.
That's amazing.
The Gay Games also employ people outside of our community in order to provide further education and encourage heterosexual athletes to compete as well.
That part is important.
We're trying to bridge the gap, everyone.
Bridge the gap. Inclusion as we preach.
Preach.
I couldn't think of the word then.
Bridge the gap. And lastly, transgender athletes have been competing in the Gay Games since 1994. And that year, the Games hosted 1,500 more athletes than the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona.
Wow.
So the Gay Games,
really cool.
Tom and Sarah put the Gay Games together to try and bridge these gaps that we do have in society and to try and make an event open to everyone.
Yeah.
So there you have it, a little rundown on Gay Games and how they've been such a positive and important part of the community and how none of it would have been possible without Tom Waddell and Sarah Lewinstein.
Literally.
Their vision changed the lives of so many and continue to do so.
These two people would be very proud of what they've achieved. Mm-hmm. I know that unfortunately Tom passed away, but is Sarah still alive?
Yep, Sarah's still alive. Her and Jessica still live in the Bay Area in San Francisco. And every year that the Gay Games is on, Sarah says it's just another year that she thinks how special it is for her and Tom to have succeeded in what they did.
It is. It's so special. And the fact that we get to sit here and talk about it today, like they created such a legacy.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's really special because Tom did leave his mark on the world in a great way.
Yeah.
And it was just so unfortunate that his life was cut short due to something that
was beyond his control.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's so sad. Well, I definitely learnt things today, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners would have as well.
Mm-hmm. So there you go. The Gay Games. That's a little rundown if you had no clue what they were or who started them. And that's the most important, keeping Tom's memory alive as well every time that we have a Gay Games. Thank you, Tom and Sarah.
And everyone who continues to support it and continues to participate and run in it and keep it going. I think it's such a beautiful thing. And I hope that we get to go next year.
Yeah. So with all that information that we've just shoved in your brain,
we might let you go here.
And you better remember to
stay gay, motherfuckers.
I'm talking about, you're talking about, we're talking about just gay stuff.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Just Gay Stuff. Make sure to follow us at Just Gay Stuff Podcast on all your socials and write to us with your stories at justgaystuffpodcast@gmail.com.